Hello, so today we're going to install BottleWorks aluminum arms for the Replicator 2. I think he sells them for the Replicator 1 as well, and the Replicator 2X from Makerbot. And these were done very nicely. I gotta say, I do like the look, the feel, the quality. There's no skimming on it. So, unlike my installing of the BottleWorks heat bed plate, I'm going to do this a little differently. We're going to do this really fast. I'm going to explain a few things, do the work off video, go back to it, explain a few things. First thing, make sure you have everything that the kit came with, all the screws and everything. Hopefully you received everything in the package. I know I did. You want to have your printed pieces, your Y switch spacer, the bearing holders, and I believe this is part of the back plate. So I'll set this aside. And first thing you want to do is put your bearing stoppers on the bearings itself. You notice in the documentation you want the flat side facing down. So the flat side is going to be facing down on the bearing like such. So I'm just going to flip it upside down here. Now mine, I print it a little tight, but they clip in really well. So I know they're not going to go on me. So I'm actually going to use the Y spacer to assist me with this. There we go. Nice and flush, and that's exactly what you want. So then you follow the instructions for installing them. Really simple to do, easy. Slip it in, start your screws, don't tighten them down all the way. That comes at a later spot in the video. Same thing with the bottom. We'll get that all set up, and in addition to that, I'm going to remove the heat bed plate from the unit because we're going to be taking these arms off, which requires you to actually unwire it from the mighty board underneath at the control board. So if you have any questions about unwiring your heat bed plate or installing your heat bed plate, go ahead and watch the BottleWorks heat bed plate install video. In the very beginning, it will explain to you how to uninstall the current heat bed plate you have on there. If it's an acrylic version, I'm sure you can figure it out. Undo 3 nuts, pop it off with the springs, you're good to go. I want to go back and make a real quick note about these bearing caps. It's very important that the shiny side here faces down towards the middle of the bearing. So you want the shiny side facing in, not on the top. And there's a good reason for that too, and some design thought behind it. If your bed was properly leveled when either you printed these or the part that you had ordered with your order and he sent you the printed parts, there's going to be a lip, slightly more pressed plastic for your adhesion during the print, and this lip on the inside of the ring will actually engage and lock in the groove in the bearing at the right depth. It's the right thickness to hit that groove, so you know it's snapped in properly. It helps fit better, hold better. But if you do put it upside down, you could be adding added stress on the part around the bearing because that lip is pushing out on your bearing cap here. So another thing I want to note is there is no need for a hammer. This is a work table for me, so this is softwood. I'm not worried about pressing. You saw me press down and actually snap it in place. The key is I actually used the Y spacer and I put that on top of the bearing and pressed it in. And the only reason I used the Y spacer is because I forgot. I actually ordered parts with mine, so I had parts already printed. So you don't have to use the Y spacer for his kit that it comes with or the ones you printed if you're afraid to damage the Y spacer, although it was printed strong enough to do that. You could just grab an old bad print somewhere or another piece of wood and just put even pressure down and it will snap right in. Okay, one quick thing to note. It looks like all the bolts are for the bearings, so all 8 and 8 on each arm. They're all the same size. You cannot put these on backwards, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that. The holes only line up one way, and you want to leave them loose enough so you have this play there, because this will come in handy when you are adjusting the arms later. So don't tighten them down yet. Okay, so at this point we're gonna make sure your Makerbot is unplugged, because we'll be disconnecting the heat bed plate. Pull any side windows off, filaments off, whatever you need to pull off, and then turn it on its side. Remember, you want to put the extruder to the far corner, and you gotta turn it on its side, because you don't want the extruder sliding down. So I'll go ahead and disconnect that, and we'll be right back. Alright, and we're back, and I actually had the heat bed plate removed. I actually took my Z-axis and put it all the way to the top, because it's going to be less manual on threading that I'm going to have to do when I remove my Z-axis rod here. So I undid the back cables a little bit so I can move them up out of the way, make sure they're out of the way. So we're going to go on, unplug the Z-axis stepper motor here with a standard Phillips screwdriver, unscrew the base, and then unscrew the rod. So I went ahead and removed the 4 Phillips from the base here, and gently pull out until you have enough room, enough clearance here, that you can just simply do this little spin, but hold the rod on the inside. I'm actually going to spin it from the inside until it comes loose, and set your stepper motor aside. So now we're going to turn the printer back on its feet, and we're going to remove these 6 thumb bolts here and the one in the middle. Once the back panel is off, we're going to remove these 12 little bolts. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And this will remove the metal back brace. So once you have these 12 screws removed, we can go ahead and remove this back panel. Set that aside as well. You're going to find 2 remaining screws. At the bottom of the Z-axis plate. These 2 remaining screws are located behind here. You got one here and one over here. You're not looking at the 4 up top. You want the 2 beyond the base. After you have those 2 screws out of the bottom of the Z-axis plate here removed, if you haven't done so already, reach up behind, disconnect your Z-stop switch cable, tuck that aside, and now we're going to lift from the bottom of the Z-axis plate, lift your plate up, lift the bottom up a little bit, and move to the front of the machine. Once you get to the front of the machine, you can simply maneuver its way out and set this aside. This is what you'll be working on mostly here. Since that's our main project, go ahead and move the frame of your Makerbot aside, giving you plenty of room to finish the work you need to do. So now we're going to be disassembling the Z stage, and the only thing we're going to be keeping is this bottom plate here in between the 2 plastic arms, and this back panel here with the Makerbot M logo on it. So in disassembling it, we're going to remove 2 screws on each arm, here and here, 2 bolts on the back end plate here. There's 2 bolts underneath here and here, and then if it's facing you on the right hand side, you're going to have 3 more bolts here, here, and here. I'll go ahead and disassemble this and we'll come right back. Now we're going to install the new back plate. One thing to note, I got these 4 nuts taped in, but Remember this one we pulled out that was hiding under the old plate? You want to make sure that's in here before you put your new plate on here. I just screwed it together to make it a little easier. And this is actually a nicer plate because it fills the hole, the void, where a lot of those plastic pieces were dropping down in there. So it doesn't seal it completely, but it does a much better job than the stock one had on here. The gap's not nearly as big. So we're going to snap that on there. And with 2 screws, we're going to tighten this back up. Okay, now we got the new back plate on here. So now we're going to actually put our new arms on. So I finished putting the arms on, and I've only put 4 screws in. I've put the 2 down each arm here to hold everything in place. Now at this point, still this, we're going to take those last 4 remaining little square nuts that we had, and these are going to go into here like so, and we're going to put a screw there, there, and there, and then 2 down bottom. Nothing on the right side. So we want our 4 square nuts here, 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 and here, but we're going to put 3 screws down here because we had that one over here that's already in there, and 2 screws from the bottom. Alright, so we have our 2, 4, 5. We got 2 coming from the bottom and 3 on the left side here, all screwed down and tight. We have our 2 down each arm on each side. If you haven't done so and you had tape on there, go ahead and remove your tape. Buff off any residue left from the tape. At this point, we actually want to grease the bearings with a little bit of grease. This is the same PTFE grease that came with your Makerbot. Should look like a little tube like this. It says Super Lube, as scary as that is. Or you may have another synthetic PTFE based grease also as well. And this is actually the same thing that Makerbot gives you, just in a much bigger bottle. So we're going to take a small amount of grease and put some on the inside of the bearing. When the rod goes through, it should carry it through the bearing. We're going to do this to all 4 of these. Once you have your grease inside your bearings, depending on how you took apart, I took the base off of mine, so I'm going to be putting the top in from the top. If you took the top off with the switch, then you want to put the bottom in from the bottom. So I'm going to put my rods and line them up in here. I'm going to work it just a little bit. Make sure I get that grease flowing. And go ahead and put my bottom back on, in my case. You may have taken off your top, or you'll have to snap your top back on. Let's see. Completely dropping by itself. That's a nice sign. A very good sign, actually. So a little extra grease that's coming out around the rubber seal of the bearings. I want to wipe that off. Check the bottom as well. looks good, feels good. As a matter of fact, I could probably hold this steady. Yep, that's what I thought. That's very nice. Now we're going to tighten down the screws on our bushing retainers here. I started with tightening the top left, or I'm sorry, the top right here. Checking it, making sure it was still free. Then the bottom right, checking it again. Then I tightened 2 screws, easy to access right here and here, with the bottom pressed in all the way. Down bottom here, checked it again, and basically just checked it as I went along. And then I got to tighten the last 2 screws here and here. Still have good free play. And the last one I'm going to tighten is the top left. And the only reason I'm doing it that way is because it notes in the manual that if you get any type of tension where you feel it's not flowing free, to loosen up the top left and then retighten the top left. So I figure I'm just going to tighten the top left last. So far so good. Word of caution, when you're doing this, mine actually popped out a little bit here, which sent my bars off a little bit, and then when I put it back, I had that tension. It wouldn't slide easily. So I had to redo the left side, loosen it all up, make sure this was flush again, and then start tightening it back down again. So I'm going to finish tightening up the rest of these, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so we have a nice free-flowing bearing plate. If I take it on the side here, you don't want it to slam, you gotta watch out for that switch. You don't want to replace the switch, but if I just give it a little jiggle, it comes right down on its own. And if I turn it this way, it does the same thing, nice and free, not bad at all. Actually very nice. So we'll consider that tight and good to go on to the next step. Alright, so now we're going to bring our printer back up. And we're going to take our Z-axis tray. We're going to put the top in first and slide the bottom. Like so. There you go. Let's take a look at that. We're not quite center here, we're kind of off alignment, so let's see where I missed. Pull it back out. If it will come back out. So I'm looking for is these 2 screws that go here. There's washer, brass nuts in the back. You want those aligned. Okay. There we go. And then we're going to install your 2 small screws on your bottom base here. So next step is we're going to install the Y washer spacer. We're going to remove the 2 bottom screws, and then we're going to actually remove the switchboard circuit itself. You have 2 bolts or 2 little nuts left over from the hardware kit that came with your aluminum arms. So the Y switch itself we're going to use the two existing screws we just took off, and we're going to screw it on to the Y switch like so, right there. So we have our Y switch spacer installed now, and we're going to go and bolt that with the plug facing down into the two existing holes using the same two screws you pulled out of the original Y spacer, which was this piece here, and the two nuts that came with your hardware kit. So I'm going to put a nut into the back of one, hold it in place with my finger as I line it up in the hole here. Slide the screw in. Keep your finger there to keep that nut in place until you get it started. And I won't tighten it down all the way until I get the second one started. Plug your Y switch back in. And what you're looking for is to make sure, there you go, perfect. So after you have your Y switch plugged back in, that should be a good reminder to not forget to plug your Z switch back in. Now we can start reassembling the block. And we'll start reassembling with this first. 12 screws, 6 up top, 6 down bottom. Once you have your back support panel on, we're going to install the back PVC panel. Once you have your back PVC panel screwed back in place, we're going to take our wiring harness, snap that into place. Put a wire tie back up at the top here. Like so. And we're going to be doing our Z-axis rethreading that. So we'll put the butt back on its side. And start to screw this back into place. Once you have your Z-axis rod screwed back in, we're going to take our 4 long silver screws and we're going to screw the stepper motor back down to the frame like so. And when I'm done this, I'll plug in the stepper motor and I'll actually turn it over on its front, install the heat bed plate, run the wires down, rewire my heat bed plate, put my cover back on, and then my side panels. And then we're going to load some filament, take it for a test drive. So pretty much that's the installation of the aluminum arms from BottleWorks. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this video helped you a little bit. If it did, go ahead and leave comments, subscribe. I'll do doing more videos like this again in the future. And if you didn't like it, then I really don't care. Leave a message anyway, I'll probably ignore it. Thanks for watching. I wanted to add two quick notes while I was installing my heat bed plate here. First one is, in the toolkit it comes with little spacers, and these spacers are for your heat bed. If you already have the aluminum heat bed plate installed from BottleWorks, then most likely you already have these spacers installed, so you won't need them. For other heat bed plates or other build plates in general, you kind of have to just assess it and see if you need to install them or not. Second, I forgot to note, if you wiped down your Z-axis rod to get all that old grease off, and took advantage of the fact that it was out of the machine at the time, don't forget to re-grease that as well. And I believe that about does it. So again, thanks for watching. Subscribe. I'll be doing more videos in the future. I got other things planned and other parts coming my way.